Hi, everybody. Welcome. I am going to go ahead and start our forum for today. Um, my name is Khanum Sheikh, and I have the pleasure of welcoming all of you today to this very exciting event on the historical legacies and the ongoing effects of settler colonialism. Um, I am Khanum Sheikh, as I said, and I'm one of the co-directors of the Civil Discourse and Social Change Initiative here at CSUN. My co-director at CDSC is Dr. Clement Lai, who is also a professor in Asian American Studies. And with our team today is also our beloved colleague, Dr. Marta Lopez Garza, who is both in Gender and Women's Studies and in Chicano-Chicana Studies, and who has been the visionary and the force in organizing this program today. We are also accompanied by our fabulous team of student interns who work at CDSC with us, and Janessa, Mary, and Vivian, although I'm not sure everybody was able to make it today. Um, and also Ayan Jama, who is from the University Student Union. We also have with us today Nicole and Helen, who are going to be with us through the course of this event, interpreting this event. Let me give you a brief introduction to the Center for Civil Discourse and Social Change, or CDSC. CDSC is a unique interdisciplinary social justice initiative that's funded by the Office of the Provost here at CSUN. And it was founded 11 years ago by Dr. Marta Lopez Garza and Dr. Catherine Sorrells to address student concerns regarding access to higher education and the fee hikes that were making education inaccessible for students. At the invitation of CDSC Reverend James Lawson Jr., who is a prominent civil rights leader and the architect of the US's nonviolent movement, now continues to serve as a visiting scholar here at CSUN. And he conducts frequent workshops and teaches courses on nonviolent activism, which many of you might know about. This year, he will be teaching his course through the Communication Studies Department in the fall. And we are really proud to have him affiliated with CDSC. It's an honor to have a legend like him with us. Over the last 11 years of CDSC, our work has grown, CDSC has grown into a dynamic hub for scholarship and praxis that helps students envision and work towards a more just world. We host community organizers and leaders and advocates who are at the forefront of justice building movements. We also host an annual student social justice conference that features the scholarly and creative work of our CSUN students. And in fact, this year our conference will be on April 21st. And you will see a link for the conference in the chat today, a little bit later. And our deadline for submissions for students' abstracts is March 15th. And it's a fantastic conference. And we invite the students in the audience to consider submitting an idea for a research paper, and presenting at this conference. Our keynote speakers for the student social justice conference will be Dr. Ruthie Gilmore, who is a prison abolitionist and a prison scholar, and Julian Uggan, who is an indigenous human rights lawyer and a writer from Guam. We also encourage you to visit our website, where you can find more information about the conference and other events that CDSC is organizing. At the end of this month, we also will be hosting a roundtable discussion with advocates and organizers from Los Angeles to South Africa, who are at the forefront of enacting strategies for transformative justice in areas of land distribution and redistribution, labor organizing, addressing issues of sexual violence, and the movement for abolition. So it should be a really exciting conversation, and the flyer should be up soon. So do visit our website for that as well. Before we move into today's program, more specifically, I'd like to say that this event would not have been possible without our partners, which include and the support we've received from the University Student Union, or the USU, the CSUN American Indian Studies program, CSUN's Chicano-Chicana Studies Department, and the Fernandinho Tatavian Band of Mission Indians, and from the College of Humanities at CSUN. So thank you all for making this possible. So we have a pretty packed program. This is how the format will go. From me, I will pass the mic on to Mr. Mark Villaseñor, who is the Vice President of Fernandinho Tatavian Band of Mission Indians, which is a sovereign tribe of Los Angeles County. Mark has been a very active and determined member of his community, both culturally and politically, and he is also a CSUN alum, which is pretty cool. Mark will share with us some history of the Tatavian Band of Mission Indians from the San Fernando Valley, which is very exciting. After Mark, we will hear from Dr. Scott Andrews, who is a professor of English and who specializes in American Indian literature here at CSUN. He's also the director of the American Indian Studies program. He is a citizen of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. So after Dr. Andrews' brief comments, we will screen episode 1 of Raul Peck's documentary film, Exterminate All the Brutes. This episode is about 1 hour long. So, I'm really excited to watch it. I actually have not even had a chance to watch it myself. And shortly after, we will actually have a talk by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz, who is a well-known and respected historian, very respected historian and author of numerous books, including, but not limited to, Indigenous Peoples' History of the U.S. She will join our team around 5 o'clock. And after her lecture, we will have time for Q&A. And we hope to close this around 6:15 or so. So without further ado, I would like to pass the Zoom floor, on to Mark Villaseñor, who will share some of the history of the Tatavian people in the San Fernando Valley.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Villaseñor. I am the Vice President of Fernandinho Tatavian Band of Mission Indians, like was said. And I'd just like to start off with a land acknowledgement. I want to acknowledge the lands of the Sesabitam from the village of Sesavenga, which is actually where the closest village to Cal State Northridge would reside. These are the ancestral inhabitants of that area, one of the 26 villages that make up the coalition of native villages taken to Mission San Fernando, ranging from Santa Clarita Valley, San Fernando Valley, Antelope Valleys, and parts of Simi Valley. I'm going to show you a little presentation to discuss some of the history and background of my people. Give me 1 second. Okay, so starting out, we're going to go ahead and with a little overview of the pre-mission period, historical context, and also the land rights and recognition. So during the late 1700s, when the Spanish came here, they started instituting what is known as the mission system. Unfortunately, for a lot of the indigenous inhabitants of the San Fernando Valley and pretty much where any mission was created, were basically slaves and incarcerated within the mission system. That was the process of how things happened then. And it's a legacy that, is hard to come to terms with the modern archdiocese in some fashion. And then also just to get the correct history out there. So that is kind of the legacy of the mission system from a native perspective, a California native perspective here in California. So all these red dots, they are all villages that existed within the context of the map that you see here. The 26 villages that come from this are part of those red dots. And all these villages today are the only villages that have lineages left surviving from our people. So we have links to all these villages from the three main families that we have, the three lineages. So if you think of a village, think of a lineage. So out of the 26 lineages that we have that were encompass the Fernandinho, there are 3 that are surviving to this day. And so here is a context of the 26 villages that are encompass the Fernandinho over the course of an LA County map, but also where our ancestral boundaries were at. So on this map, it doesn't have Sesavenga because at the time, this map, we did not put a lot of the villages that survived or didn't survive on the map. So there are more villages than this. However, many of those have were deceased, but also anywhere there's a shoe, a horseshoe, is actually where our tribe received land grants during the Spanish period. So like my family was from the village of Chutkonga, which is right there above the 134 and where the 405 meet. That's actually what is now present day Encino. And my family had 4,400 acres of it, but we were not able to retain it. So like I was saying, each village had a lineage. Each lineage was its tribe pre the mission. And also each lineage was autonomous. So the village of Encino wouldn't talk to the village of Tahunga. Now, some of you may have heard those terms before. That is because those are the memories of who were there originally in the modern contemporary context. So the tribe today that we know is actually a coalition of villages that were enslaved at Mission San Fernando. Because of that autonomous nature of each village, cohesion was only brought in during this time of the Spanish period because they were forcing all of our ancestors into one place. And so once the community was established, even though they weren't inherently the same political entities as in a separate village, but once they came together, they realized that, being part of the whole was more beneficial. This is a little language activity. So Tahunga actually is, it says, actually means place of the old woman, because there was a statue there that was carved in the shape of a woman. So this is just a little teaser here that says, I am from Tahunga. So the root word is tuhu, and the nga means place, means I am of, or I'm of the place here. So then if you, in this context, I am from, it would be, I am from Tuhubit. So a person who says, I am in Tahunga, that's where I'm from, is a person called Tuhubit. And then if you want to say the people of Tahunga, using the same root word, you would use the Tuhubitam. So then the vit is I am from, then the am is pluralization. And this man on the right is actually an informant for J.P. Harrington, who did a lot of cultural anthropology of the California Native Americans during the early 1900s, all the way, I think, through the mid-20s. And he was one of the informants and to that individual. And he said, Setimo said, if you want to know all about Fernandinho, you need to go ask Antonio Maria Ortega. But then it also states in his notes right after that, in like the subsequent next few lines, it says, Antonio Maria Ortega declined to talk. Antonio Maria Ortega is my great-great-grandfather. So, over the course of his life, he had a rough go of it. So he was very hesitant in talking to outside people about his culture, his history, and who he was, and who were the people of, the San Fernando Valley. So you can see here some of the indigenous derived names. So Cahuenga, of course, is actually where Studio City is at, basically Universal Studios. That was the village of Cahuenga. That was a land grant held by one of our lineages. There's a whole thing about the Battle of Cahuenga Pass. You can check it out. He was actually, the guy who owned that was actually going to get killed by the Californios. So he sold his property and moved to Tahunga, which one of our other lineages was at, and actually bought that Tahunga with that money. And then at some point he lost it. And then he moved to the village of Encino, Sikonga, where my family was at, showing that tie between the lineages at that very volatile era. And so Tapo Canyon, that's another one, Tapunga. Humaliwo is actually the name for Malibu in the Chumash language. And then Birukanga is Piru, and as you can see there, Pokoinga actually means the entrance. So the place of the entrance. So it was like the entrance to the valley, or the entrance to Tahunga. And then Castek, and then Tupanga, which people now call Topanga. And so this is just a little bit about our name. So people ask, well, what are you? What's your name? During the pre-Spanish era, I would have said, I'm Sukabit, right? A person from Encino. That's how you would identify. That's how each individual from a different village would identify, saying, I am Tuhubit, Tapobit, Kawevit, Pakoibit. But during the Spanish period, once they rounded up pretty much everybody from the villages and brought them to Mission San Fernando, they started calling them as one cohesive unit, the group of Fernandino, because prior to that point, we weren't Fernandinos. Only then was it associated as Fernandino. And today we use that Fernandino as a history of the three surviving lineages that stuck together past the mission era. And then also the Katanamuk referred to us as the Tatayam, or as the people facing the sun, or the people of the southern slopes. And so we really took to that and decided to call ourselves the Fernandino Tataviam Band of Mission Indians. And this is Eugenia Mendez. She's a Katanamuk woman, and I think part Tataviam, and she was an informant for J.P. Harrington as well. And so during that time in 1843, we petitioned lands in San Fernando to the Mexican government at that time, that we requested the mission lands that were no longer being used. And during that whole process, they awarded land grants. Rancho El Encino, which was by my family, Rancho Tahunga, Cahuenga, Sikwanga, Patskunga, which is San Fernando, the Scorpion, which is Woodland Hills-ish, or Bell Canyon area. And so, unfortunately, we were not able to retain those. This is actually the man in the middle is Rogelio Rocha. He was a captain of what is San Fernando. If anybody's familiar, the Rudy Ortega Senior Parks on the corner of Hubbard and 4th, that was actually 2 acres of his 20-acre parcel. But at that time, Benjamin Porter and Clay were buying up all the lands around it, and they really wanted his land because it had a natural spring on it. So what happened is that they colluded to deprive Rogelio of his land, saying he didn't pay taxes or he signed it over in some form or fashion. Unfortunately, he lost his land. Also, the judge was actually Charles McClay's cousin. So, that time there was no ethics. So unfortunately, he was dispossessed. And my great-great-grandfather, Antonio Maria Ortega, was actually protesting him getting evicted on his land, and got arrested and fined $500 for every month that he was staying, and $50 rent for every month that he was staying on the property in in 1878. That was a lot of money. So, like I said earlier, we have the three lineages, which are the lineages from the village of Sikanga, Tahunga, and Coenga. Those are the surviving lineages of the Fernandino peoples. And right now we consist of about approximately 900 enrolled members. And we now refer to these villages by lineages, by family names. So the Ortega lineage that you can see through Antonio Maria Ortega. You can see the Garcia lineage, which is through Josephine Leyva Garcia, and then the Ortiz through Jose Triunfo Ortiz. And currently, because we didn't have land, we were not able to get put into the 1891 Mission Indian Relief Act, which ultimately led to the federal recognition and Indian reservation system that we know today. Tribes such as San Manuel, Morongo, Agua Caliente, all these different tribes that have reservation lands had it because they already had existing land. We were deprived from it because we did not have land at that time. So in this effort, we've been trying to get our federal recognition. And so we've applied to the Office of Federal Acknowledgement, the Department of the Interior, to seek that federal recognition status as our inherent sovereignty allows us to do. And occupy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. I'm going to invite Dr. Scott Andrews to join the web screen and to begin your part of the presentation. That was fantastic. So much learned.
Thanks, Mark. So my name is Scott Andrews, and I'm the director for the American Indian Studies program at CSUN, and I was asked to say a few things about the first episode of this HBO series that you're going to see tonight. And I had several thoughts, but one is today's episode. The episode you're going to watch tonight is going to be about many ways about genocide, which is probably a term you're familiar with. And to a lesser degree, it's going to be about cultural genocide, which is about, the killing of the life ways and religion and gender roles and all the ways that people inhabit the world to try to remake them into the colonizers' form. But in my classes, in American Indian Studies classes, I don't shy away from talking about the tough topics like genocide, but I also like to emphasize the successes. And our show tonight is going to start by talking about the Seminole, the Muskogee Creek people who are in Florida, the Seminole people, Seminole tribe of Florida now today. And it's going to talk about, some awful events for them. But I like to remind people, if you've been to a Hard Rock hotel and casino, you've been to a property owned by the Seminole tribe of Florida. That the thing I like to talk about with genocide is that it didn't succeed. That is, Native people are here. Native people are growing in numbers. Mark shared with you some of the history of his people. But if you were to visit the Tataviam today, you would see a thriving community. You would see tribal administration offices in San Fernando that are packed to the gills with people doing good work for their community, writing grants, developing businesses, educating students. The effort to make them disappear failed. The Tataviam are with us today. My ancestors of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, there's 400,000 citizens of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. The Seminole tribe in Oklahoma, the people who got removed from Florida to Indian Territory, there's 14,000 there. There's 5,000 Seminole in Florida. The Creek Nation, who are like the cousins to the Seminole, there's 81,000 of them in Oklahoma. So that is to say, Native people are with us today, living fully contemporary lives and doing great things. a phrase that maybe you don't hear too often that you'll see talked about in this episode is settler colonialism. And settler colonialism, Raoul Peck, the filmmaker, will talk about. Um, it's the attempt to erase Native people, figuratively and literally. That is to kill them, make them disappear. But it also is the attempt to make them disappear from the stories that you tell about them. And Patrick Wolfe, a scholar, has a famous line about settler colonialism, a famous statement. Settler colonialism is a structure, not an event. That is, some of the Raoul Peck's episodes you're going to watch tonight talks a lot about things that happened in the past, in Africa, in the United States, in Southeast Asia, in the past. But Patrick Wolfe's point is that settler colonialism is an ongoing process. Maybe not so much the genocide and the outright violent killing of indigenous people, though that still happens in Central America, especially where resource companies are looking for mines and drilling sites, but more in the idea of getting their land away from them, getting the land so you can exploit the resources that are in it. That's still an ongoing process, and we talk about that in class. But it's also a way of thinking, and it can even it's so insidious. Settler colonialism is so insidious that it can impact the people who are trying to critique it. And that happens in what you're going to watch tonight, in the opening scenes. It's going to try to tell a story about the US government's attempt to conquer the Seminole people, which they never did. The Seminole people famously never signed a treaty with the US government. And because of this, they call themselves the unconquered people. And in the process of telling you that, Raoul Peck then dramatizes the slaughter of a whole village of Seminole people. And so like you'll find these weird moments where in the attempt to critique the violence of settler colonialism, he tells a story that enacts it by showing them all dead, but they didn't all get killed. So the Seminole people were very successful, hiding in the swamps, escaping the US government, escaping the army. That's why they're still in Florida today and not where I'm from, Oklahoma. So that's just something to keep in mind, is that settler colonialism is an ongoing process, but Native people live fully contemporary lives, and you can see it in the image behind me, one of the things I use for my backdrop, which is a painting by an Apache woman, Deborah Yepapapan. And you can see a photograph of an ancestor in it. You can see some perhaps stereotypical images of teepees that we associate with American Indians, and Hello Kitty, right? That she's showing you that she's alive. She's part of a long string of ancestors and cultural practices, but she's also alive right now, enjoying her life in the 21st century. And so also to keep in mind, Raoul Peck, towards the end of this episode, has a line where he says, this is a story, not a historical document. And so that means he's going to take some liberties occasionally with how he illustrates the story, how he tells you about things, a lot of free association. And there might be something to talk about at the end of the episode, is what did we watch that was like historically accurate, and what did we watch that was going for more like an emotional effect, and maybe took some liberties. So with that, I'll turn it back to Hanem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. We're going to jump right into the screening of the first episode of Exterminate the Brutes. So, Raquel, I'm going to ask for you to take over from here with the tech.